Right, I'm live. So today, in an interview, I was asked if I wanted to implement a Words for Friends clone, how would I do it? And, well, I wasn't very good on my. I was going to say I got nervous. So I wanted to take the opportunity, put my face in the video. Hold on. Where is this order? Bring to up. Yeah, I'm gonna add my webcam. See, gotta add my webcam. There I am. We're gonna make that a relatively small. I stuff this corner. Right. Okay. So I was asked in an interview to create Friends Clone. On the spot from memory. And made me sick not being able to do it. So I decided walk how I could implement words with. See, we're gonna start with first you need to understand the problem. Flowchart. Okay, first of all, um, we have the game. Well, what is it? Um, Something like I don't know how you would do. I'm just gonna do it like this. Wireframe. We're just gonna stick to the wireframe mode. I can do. So, first thing I'm going to do is we're going to and set updating. Oh, not this again. On. See. There we go. Um I lost viewers. Not gonna work. All right, that's perfectly fine. Just go with that. Pardon me. I still needed to get something set up. Right, so I'm just gonna turn up the scale of my web browser. You scale that up by 50%. You can see this. All right, so the first thing we need to do is we need to understand the problem in hand. So to do that, we need to know one. What is Word with Friends? What is the game about? We can answer that with turn-based a turn-based multiplayer implementation, a tile-based spelling game where the goal is to a bag words of letters goal is to use a bag of letters different or build the longest or strongest scoring word based on the occurrence alphabet. So kind of know, like, I'm trying to define what it what is the winning condition? Winner is determined. There are no possible for a bag E or a player sign. So we needed to break that down into something like I actually still have to do that manually. Turn-based tiles, turn-based spelling game. Goal is to use a bag of letters with build the longest, strongest scoring word. Based on the rarity of occurrence alphabet, winner is determined when there are more possible bag is empty or player resigns. So from this we can gather that we have a few things we can use to implement our basic data structures. Our goal here, now that we've defined a really generic idea of what it is, we need to identify what kind of things we would need to implement our minimum. We would start with single player. We would get the word game to work by itself. Then we would implement the syncing it with. I would implement the syncing of players. No point in working a game if it doesn't. Right. So, our data structures look something like this. Well, we know have words. We have letters. We have words. We have letters. Alphabet, so we have a language. Assuming you need to know what language. This one's going to assume that they're English. It's a tile-based game, and so we're gonna need tiles, maybe grid. Tiles are arranged in a grid. And something that I did forget to mention is that words can be placed. Words can be placed or vertically cross axis of a word. Only if surrounding the surrounding tiles adjacent to placed tiles spell word correctly. Um, so words, letters, language, tiles, grid. We have a so essentially here we have a grid of tiles. That doesn't look gonna do this. We have a grid of tiles that uh, tiles contain letters. Um, have a grid of words. They're broken down to tiles and letters. Um, each letter has a score. That's not pretty. They're just trying to move. The letters, each letter has a score that builds up to a word score, and the word score is we'll just start simple. So each letter has a score, and the words have a score based on the letters. This So in our data set somewhere, we would have all right. Sure. We're gonna, so you know what, for now, I'm just gonna do this. I've decided for now we're gonna separate visual ideas from we're gonna separate the front end from the back end. So each language has a set of words, right? A set of valid words. We could also think of this the other way around. Instead of language, words, letters, we could also think of a list of words, a list of letters make up words that make up the language. So have a list of words, letters like A, C, D, right? And those are the valid letters. Those are the valid letters in that language. Then you have this. Then you have words like hello world, etc. And those would be made of these letters. As a way to validate what it is. And then the language would be defined as those set of words and letters, and you would say, okay, problem would be, given language English, what are the valid letters? So you would want a relationship between language and letters that would allow you to query the letters for language. So say language, you had a language ID, and 0 was English. And upon startup of the application or at some point in time, you would need to say, you would choose your language, which was English. You would look up English, get the language ID. But you wouldn't want to make a round trip. You would want, at that point, you would want to structure your query in a way where the goal was, get me all of the letters for this language. So you could either hard code those in, which these probably would be hard coded. Why wouldn't they? Saying. Words, though, may not be hard coded. You may have different word sets but the letters will always be the same. But say for some reason I decided to store them in the database. You would have to decide between storing them in their own table. I actually do not know the proper yes. What would be something you could do? So you could either store all the letters in one table, but then you have to filter them out. Or you could make them in a table on their own. If you did something like, well, if we weren't constrained by guides or conventions, you'd do something like English letters for a table name. It's easier to see. You could do something like English letters. If you were allowed to do dynamic SQL. But a lot of times, no. So if you can't use dynamic SQL, let's say if you could, then you could say, for the language, get the table, its prefix. And then you could do that. Otherwise, I'd say you'd have to make one table that had all the letters in it. And that would have language, which was an integer primary key. Integer, depending on your dialect. Ideally, you would want this to be not null. Wouldn't put that in parentheses, but I've had some cases where inserting something into this would cause it to. Ideally, you would want this to be not null. You would want this to be associated with some language at times. You'd need a primary key. No, sorry. This is a foreign key. The constraint syntax varies. We're using transact SQL. So it needs foreign key references. This would be language dot that's just what I remember off the top of my head. Something like You would need a language ID, would need a primary key. So it would be, so you have table letters, you have a link. So first I'm gonna say letter ID int. What is the TSQL at? Okay. I'm gonna go ahead and look that up. SQL. An auto increment. We're gonna assume it's auto. Because I don't. It's been a while. I know there's a syntax for it, but I don't quite know. Texted. So need a letter ID. It would be nice if they auto incremented. Unless you had a specific set, then you would take out auto increment. And and then you're gonna need character. I assume you wouldn't want text because text wouldn't be appropriate. Only store character. So I would say letter either one second, please. Is that my door? So assuming that TSQL has a char type, I would use char to hold one character. And if it didn't, I would use a check constraint. Like text with a check. One second, please. Man, I should really just tell people to serve me. Um. So yeah, sorry about that. I got interrupted from a phone call. So this is how I would implement the database. Maybe some letters. You have the letter, and then you have something like so you need a list of words. So you do something like there, something like this. You would need a primary key. You'd need a language ID. Wait a second though. Um, language ID, and then word. So the word here would need to be limited. This would need to be limited by the size of the grid. Wait. See. Take a look at words with friends. Do startup stuff. So this Words with Friends is a 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, 8. It's a 15 by 15 grid. So we're gonna say that I'm just, for simplicity's sake of a clone, we're just gonna do like a 7 by 7 grid. Go from there. So we're gonna say that word is a we can either say varchar or a text to check constraint, but varchar 7 not null. We don't want to be able to have null words. That would be interesting. Sorry about that. Something like that. And then you would need a language reference. Anyways, let's see. Apologies, I had a visitor. So we go from letters, words to language like that. You really needed to know what language, like, this. Language ID. Int. Something like a name or label. We're gonna put X because we don't know. I don't necessarily know what kind of character, how long it is yet. Like this. So let's say I'm in the startup. I'm in the startup of my app. I need to know right, the user. So I need the n+1 problem is something like this. So in order to know the data I need, I would need to know what language we're working with. And then when we get the language we're working with, we need to know the words and letters. And the n+1 problem is a little bit like for every step I have to take, sometimes with the improper data structure, you end up having to fetch the amount of requests to get the data you need plus extra information. And that tends to be a big problem. I experienced that with my personal project and team project. So, sorry. So we would have to start. Let's just say we were starting up the app and we don't have a server involved with this yet. We're just going to work with database queries. So on startup, let's just say we've already created the user's account and we know that their language is okay. So, language English. So we need to get all the words and letters associated with, or not all of them, but we would need to be able to get what words. Yeah, we would need to get a list of words and letters or be able to query the server. So, given that their language was English and given that their language was English, you could get a list of words associated with that language by doing select star from words or starred from words, get all words, language equals select language ID from language where in case we have name. Kind of going beyond. Name equals English. Or we could just say their language, or if we're using prepared statements, put $1 argument. But we're just gonna say user length placeholder, because we don't. Well, yeah, we're saying language, so we're gonna say where name is English. And that would return all of the words with the correct length. So this is it all works. This would be, so now you would do the same thing with the way I have the table set up. You would do the same thing for letters. Okay, select star from letters. Your language ID is English. You'd have to know the language ID ahead of time though. If you did not necessarily want to store language IDs, this, do it in a table. Or perhaps, not sure if this is standard, but maybe you could put language name on the words and letters table themselves. We'd have to keep them updated somehow, but this would remove the for their language. But yeah, so what about get all letters? That's right. Each letter has a score. Right. Need these to be not null, right? Because you don't want null letters and you don't want null. Why you would? Doing something like this. Select star from letters where language ID is English. And you would get a list of all of the letters associated with that. So what if you needed both of them? To same time. Well, Transact SQL has something called union. But the columns need the same. I don't know if you that. I'd like to see if you could, or I would take some time to read. Possible. So we have a way to get. We have a way to get the words and letters. What if we need to check a letter or check a word? Well, we would need to check if a word exists. I'm not sure we could do too much in terms of actual on the data yet. I haven't that far into it. So the next one would be like check word. Here is where the n+1 problem. So check word would be this query plus it would be this one plus and letter equals $2. I'm assuming because you know what? Yeah, we're gonna parameterize. We're gonna assume that you're parameterizing and passing in parameters. We're gonna assume that the language is the first thing you send. And this will either return, depending on if you're querying directly or you're using an ORM, you could get either null or an empty letter. And you would have to say that letter doesn't exist, but that word doesn't exist. You would know what letters there are. The letters don't really change really that much. That's why I kind of said letters. You would need to know what letters to put on there, yes, but you don't really need to update the letters during the runtime of the application. You're not going to ever update the words unless you have a different word list all of a sudden. So we're just doing a basic. I didn't need to go there. Wanted to check a word. You do something like this. If the server returned null, null or empty, you would assume that it's not on your word list. From words, and I made a mistake here. That needs to be word. I mixed word and letters for me. Okay. So yeah, that would be how I would check words. This is how you would check the database. I'm assuming you would hold most of your database, most of your data in a data to distribute this all over the place. Doing it in the database would allow you to dynamically update the static, or insert into a letter where this is this score. Get all that from the database. Yeah, so you have your check word. So that's I'd say that was a high level overview of just words and stuff. Now, what about would need a user table. Right now, for the sake of this example, I know they're probably going to want me to give them a concrete example. We're going to need to create some kind of table to keep track of each game going on, playing it, the outcome. So you could do something like Alright. Sorry. I need to keep track of the games that are going on. So, something like need a table for games would need kind of primary. What I did forget. I'm not sure if you need to use primary key here, but I'm going to anyways. We're going to need to keep track of the games that are game ID Uh, there are 2 players. Could do player 1, player 1. It's a foreign key. Need a foreign key, and that would reference player. We're doing games. We can do game and player. That's player. You do it like this, or you could trying to focus here. Come on, phone, quit disturbing me. Where player ID. Yeah. You would need score for the game ID. Player 1. Player 1 score. Uh, I forgot. Actually, we default here. Default would be an option. Specify then in case we don't. Now, if I was being thorough, I would also put a check constraint. Never want negative scores. To be greater than. Um, scared, man. I'm nervous and scared, and I don't know who is willing to invest. Should have gone to school, son. Did. Dev Mountain. Should have gone to college. I did. But whenever I presented the opportunity that I was more advanced, loud, done for. I'm not saying everything, but I went okay, I went out of my way to learn how to implement. I was very proud. It took 3 days. That's a lot. And I didn't even know if I could. I think, my opinion. Uh, sorry, I keep getting cool. So I would check if the score is greater than 0. Right. So now I think we have the basics here. Have 2 player IDs, scores, um, and their scores, right? Um, you would also need to keep track of. We're not there yet, but we would need to keep track of. We would need some way to store the state, the game, the grid, tiles, and um, that would be. I gotta stand. Um, now we have um um yeah, you have a play game with player ID. To database server, so whenever the game or server started back up again, you could get to the even when the client closed the game, you have to get the game be able to assemble them. Um, you have the basic information you need a player track game, at least the score. So now you'll need a way to store. Need a way to store your words. We might be able to do something. Game moves, maybe. You'd need some kind of thing to store it. So I would guess you'd do something like game moves. Um, move the int yes. So you would need what word so word ID int and that would reference um uh words ID. I'm assuming at this point, the assumption at this point, creating this table, is that a game or database will have checked what word is being played before. Uh, here, you can either store the word ID or the word itself. Each one will pay. For the word ID, you'll have to look it up later. You don't store the word ID, but store the word instead, you'll have to make sure whenever put it on the table that it's valid word. And doing that would having to look it up again. I would want so you have a move ID, a word ID, need a game. Foreign key. Word that'd be game, pardon me. game.game game ID commas. Might be useful for what player made the move. Foreign key player dot, and then from here need to know where the word started. Can either like I think it would be easy just to get the word, create the tiles from the word itself. So need to know in like grid start X. Grid start X. No. Grid start Y. Then you would need to know if it was placed horizontally, vertically. Position bool. We can make that a bool. We could say horizontal or horizontal. Not all possible 0 or 1. It could be an Eno, or in this bool, or so okay, what at this point you could either do like, okay, if you add the word here, you could say the length of player ID. Now you have the grid place where it starts. Would need a length. Got that. Look that up. Have where it's horizontal. Now you would need some way to we need a way to sit down for a minute. You would need some way to encode double word, or bonus. If it absolutely matters exactly where it's at, I don't know. So we could say something like double word multiplier, or you can also have a triple word multiplier. You could also have a double the letter, though. The letter, like if you do letters, you'll kind of need to know which letters. Oh, this simple example may not cover that case. But for words, this would definitely cover word multipliers. Since we're only considering the context of the word, I think you'd only need to know how many. You could do int multiplier count. I think the game, though, is designed in a way where it's either true or false. Don't. A triple word multiplier, int not null. Letter. At this time in game moves, there's no way to encode what letter was placed where exactly. Only a start. I mean, you could encode it as some kind of text. There's nothing saying you have to database as a table or something. If you, I mean, the way it's set up now, you could do a whole bunch of math. Okay, what if it's kind of like iffy, but what if instead of And I know this is probably not best practice, but if you think about it, double word multiplier is something of, I have a multiplier at x comma y, and I have multiple x comma y values, and that makes the number of multipliers. Because at some point you will need to calculate the intersection between these two. So, I mean, I'm not sure if you would need to encode this in the database somehow, but you would need to take it into a factor into their score for this move, right? If we kept it simple, right, we could have the client identify whether or not it was a triple. Client or server identify whether or not it was a word score or a double word score. Because we can encode where it starts. We can encode where it starts. We can encode whether it's a horizontal. Something like that. Yeah. It might be simpler if we just did something like a score. And from here, and I would say in this early development of the game, since we're still trying to work on a minimum viable product, that we could take this information on the client or the server and use some math to generate where everything should be. So the total score would be sum all the game moves of the player ID for each game. So that's about how I would do the database queries. I'm thinking about coming back for another video if you really need me. I think the next time we'll work on the database queries for these game moves. See about implementing this in Transact SQL, how we would insert update. I think this concludes part 1. There's certain to be many more parts. I think hour and I'm going to cut this up, present it. Thank you for watching. I don't want to. Yep. Inch